And then there was a Sunday where we had some homeless guys come in, kind of stroll around. They're sitting on the front row with us. And then like a few rows back is the governor's entire family. And it was kind of like,
that's awesome.
Okay, this is a great picture of the church,
man,
and what God's doing, that we can have this wide range of people from the city right here in this location. And so I think for me, that was a big, that was a God moment, a Holy Spirit moment.
Men's Alliance is tribes across the nation that meet weekly for rugged outdoor workouts and real-world devotions around a fire. We are changing what Christian men's ministry in this country looks like. And when you're ready to challenge yourself physically and spiritually, join us at men'salliancetribe.com. Welcome to the Men's Alliance podcast. I'm Dave Mills, Goose, and with me today, special guest, Jason Nicholas.
How we doing?
Jason is the campus pastor for the chapel in Scott's Addition.
Yes.
So welcome, Jason.
Good to be here. Thanks for letting me be here.
Thanks, man.
I'm excited.
Yeah, dude, this is fun.
Yeah.
And so Scott's Addition campus is where we have Tango Tribe. Started about 2 years ago by Bench, by Mike Dennison, and he has since moved on and handed it off, and it's been going strong for a while. But it's our first urban tribe.
Come on.
So they meet in a back alleyway behind this very urban church campus, and man, I've gone there and worked out with them. No grass in sight. We're bear crawling on asphalt and flipping tires, and they've got some pull-up bars back there and a solo stove for their weekly fire. But those dudes bring it, and it's a very different demographic. Both the church, the location, and the tribe. It's Tango Tribe has a ton of young guys. It's got a bunch of guys in their 20s, and that's way below average. Men's Alliance is most other tribes, like our average is like a 40-year-old guy.
Wow.
40 to 55, and is kind of our typical tribesman is 40 to 55. But we have a lot of guys in their 30s, and then not that many in their 20s. So that's what makes Tango Tribe so rare, so awesome. And then we've got guys, a lot of guys in Men's Alliance in their 60s.
That's awesome.
Even out that average. And we've probably got about a dozen guys in their 70s. Man. So, yeah. So that's a little bit. I thought, having Jason on this podcast would talk a little bit about demographics and that kind of stuff. We don't usually do that, but, he's in a unique environment. So tell us a little bit about maybe uniquenesses or differences or challenges or blessings, or what's it like being in more of that downtown urban church environment?
Man, well, again, thanks for letting me be here.
Yeah,
this
man.
Is awesome. I'm excited. I love it. I love being in the city. It's different in the sense of, just like I said, the challenges. I think about like the Men's Alliance guys. There's not many places in the city that has a fire going in a back alleyway.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's always, I love that we got a pile of firewood in the back. You're like, you know what? Who else has got this going on? So I think some of the challenges is just, it's a different group of people that live in the city. So for our area in Scott's Addition, it's predominantly young professionals. So that's a very young demographic within that area. So for us as a location, a lot of our church has that young professional age, but we've grown immensely in all ages. It's not just you feel like just because you're in that area, it's going to be a very young demographic, but we do have a very wide range of people. And a lot of them come from outside the city. So many people used to live in the city. Maybe they moved out, maybe they went to college there, or, they moved out, had kids. That's kind of like the progression, right? Where people start in the city, move out. But now they just have a heart for, hey, what can happen in the city? What can God do in our city? They want to be a part of that. So we have people that come from all sorts of areas. Some drive 30, 45 minutes. We have people that come from Williamsburg.
wow.
that are driving to our Scott's Addition location in that area. So it's grown in the sense of it's not just right there, but a very wide variety. I mean, Mechanicsville, Atlee.
I would not have
Short
guessed
Pump.
that.
Yeah. So kind of like I kind of think about like with the river. It's like that. There's that whole big circle above it. It's like all those people kind of end up coming to that area.
Okay.
So a large from the west and the east, north, all that kind of come.
You get the governor every now and then, right?
We do.
Nice.
We do quite often.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's a lot of fun. So that's been a really neat. I think that's what's special about our location is there's also a lot of homeless people. And so I kind of had a moment one time where I was kind of like wondering like what's God doing? As a leader, you're like, how am I doing? You probably question yourself, like, man,
oh sure.
I wonder how I'm doing.
Sure.
And I think I kind of got myself in a funk. And then there was a Sunday where we had some homeless guys come in, kind of stroll around. They're sitting on the front row with us. And then like a few rows back is the governor's entire family. And it was kind of like,
that's awesome.
Okay, this is a great picture of the church.
Man.
And what God's doing. That we can have this wide range of people from the city right here in this location. And so I think for me, that was a big, that was a God moment, a Holy Spirit moment.
That was a gift, right?
Oh, yeah.
God was showing you something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a good kick in the butt from God. Like, hey, there's a lot going on. I'm moving here. Things are happening. And so just to have that kind of place. And I think what is so exciting is that our location is so welcoming of, and we've got guys that stop by all the time that need food, need clothes. We're taking care of, like it doesn't matter who walks in the door. You see everyone get hugged, loved on, cared for. And it's just a special place. So I love having that kind of opportunity where you have such a vast array of different walks of life to come into a location like that.
That sounds, exciting. You've got to have like a different mindset, be a little bit more on your toes, a little bit more ready for anything.
Yeah.
You're not going to get bored.
Yeah.
Like
you never know what's
the suburbs
on a Sunday.
Yeah, man, that's cool. Tell us a little bit about kind of your background.
Yeah.
A little bit of Jason's story. Oh, and by the way, we've been talking about Scott's Addition. We're talking about Richmond, Virginia, in case you didn't know that or see his hat. So we are talking Richmond, and Scott's Addition is kind of like a little, what would you call those, the fan, and are they?
I don't know. Everybody thinks of New York like the boroughs.
It's a borough.
Yeah, I mean,
let's just say that.
It's a great way of saying it. There's a different
borough
area
of Richmond.
It's a neighborhood.
Yeah, it's a neighborhood. And Scott's Addition is the fastest growing neighborhood in the city of Richmond.
Okay.
So
very cool.
It's a great place.
All right. So a little bit of your story.
Yeah, man. So I grew up in a very dysfunctional home. My church upbringing was a lot from my grandparents, was with them a lot.
Okay.
My life was radically changed as a 17-year-old, right before my senior year of high school. I got invited to a church youth weekend.
Yep.
Went, man, God met me there in a way like never before. Totally changed my life in that moment. And it was there where I was like, hey, all I know is I want to tell people about Jesus. I didn't know what that looked like. This is in the 90s, so it's not like you had social media or we weren't listening to podcasts and watching stuff or seeing, my idea of what ministry was like pastors where I was like, I don't know if I want to be like that guy.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't see myself doing that. So in no way did I ever think, hey, I want to be a pastor. That was like the farthest thing from my thoughts. So I mean, as a young 17-year-old, passionate for Jesus, my senior year of high school, I really just started trying to be bold and share. I was with some guys. We started a band. So that's kind of how I even got into ministry. And
what'd you play?
I was the lead singer and I played the bass guitar.
Let's go.
So
all right.
Like Blink-182.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
It was very pop punk style.
Nice.
And you were in North Carolina, right?
North Carolina. Small town. Of North Carolina, Western North Carolina area. And so I started just calling bars and just asking about events and start playing, just calling everybody. We'd send recordings of stuff. I'd write you wrote letters then to places. And so we would start getting booked at these bars where I would just get up and start sharing my faith. Like we play a few songs. I'd be like, hey, can I share something?
Oh,
and I just start sharing my faith. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it didn't go well at all. But I really had no idea what I was doing or what to even do. I just knew that I wanted to do that. And in that season, of the youth pastor of the church was like, hey, why don't you start helping the youth group? Great. I had no idea what that meant. I barely knew what I was doing. I was just passionate and excited. And so ended up graduating from high school. He's like, why don't you be the interim youth pastor? I didn't know what that meant either. I'm like, sure. So I ended up being a youth pastor at like 19 years old.
Wow.
Kind of stepped into that role, kind of got into ministry there. That's where I met my wife. Was in church. I got married at 20. So we were in a small town, and just all I thought was, hey, this is what I want to do, is tell people about Jesus. God's changed it through the years. We've moved around some different places, pastoring. So I guess I've been kind of pastoring. Some of it wasn't always full time, but over 20 years now.
Okay.
It's kind of what I've been doing.
Man.
And so, God's brought us a long way, taught us a lot, still learning. I'm learning all the time. So,
oh, for sure.
It's good stuff.
We all are.
Yeah.
And so I'm also from North Carolina. And I remember me and you had a conversation one time where we kind of discovered that I was like, oh yeah, I grew up going to Western North Carolina. We go to Bryson City. You're like, oh, I've gone to Bryson City.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I used to fly fish. You're like, oh, I've been trout fishing. And I was like, Forney Creek Trail. You're like, yep. Yeah, and we like figured out, like, we both like stood in the same trout streams.
Yeah. There's not many people that know Forney Creek. So
Forney Creek Trail. The road to nowhere.
Man,
hike through the long tunnel.
There's some good fishing up there.
It's very iconic.
I got kicked out of that park one time.
Really?
Yeah.
How'd you do that? What were you doing?
I was fly fishing with some guys, and we had left our camp. And I don't know what happened, but we had some park rangers that come in and thought we were an abandoned camp. And so they took all our stuff, folded it up into bags, and it had rained that day. And then they were trying to say we're in the wrong spot. I feel like they thought we were somebody else or something else. And so they told us to pack up, move out. And we hiked out of Forney Creek to the road to nowhere at like 2 a.m.
Ooh,
it was a late night.
Tough trail.
I think we had like one flashlight. I was like 19.
Yeah.
So we didn't know what we were doing at all. We probably did a lot of stuff wrong.
I will say this:
the road to nowhere is a real thing.
Well, that's just the name of this particular road.
Okay.
But yeah, while we're talking backpacking, let's just talk backpacking for a little bit and national parks.
All right.
This is the Smoky Mountain National Park, and when I was growing up and going backpacking there, I went backpacking in there every spring break in college, and we never registered or paid. There was just like, we just drove and parked. Yeah. Again, there wasn't really internet. Nobody was using internet. Few people in the whole apartment complex had dial up.
Yeah.
And so we just go there and park and hike in, and then we would choose to camp wherever we wanted to camp. We would just peel off on the side of the trail and put up a tent. And then it was not till like my last couple of trips that I did as an adult in there that I learned how bureaucratic that park is.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't surprise me hearing that they would come and say, you're at the wrong spot, and pack your stuff up for you. It's like, we're in the forest, man. Yeah. There's not a wrong spot.
Yeah. You're like hours in from nowhere.
Yeah.
This is not a random campsite.
Yeah. You are so far
from fishing,
from pavement, from roads. You're not infringing on anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's funny.
Yeah. We got tickets and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now you got to like take your registration form and like pin it to your campsite. It's ridiculous.
It's a lot of work.
But anyway.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your thoughts, your perspectives on men in America, specifically where you are in Scott's Addition, urban men. There's this big national conversation. I feel like everywhere I look and read, people are talking a lot about how culture's down on men, beating up men, and also the decline nationally on men in church. So just talk a little bit about what are you seeing going on with men in America?
So, I know that nationally they're saying a decline. Personally, I don't see that. And I don't know if it's just the environment that we're in, maybe with what God's doing within our church. I think about Men's Alliance. There's movements happening where I think that men are more engaged than ever before. I can speak for even in the city to see men engaged, bringing families, men leading. We've got so many young men that are coming in from different areas, moving into that neighborhood, and to see them, guys coming to church by themselves. When I see a guy come and show up by himself, I'm like,
that's big.
Okay. I met a dude last week that just moved from Michigan. He went to Iowa State, just graduated, took a job, moved in on Saturday, showed up to church Sunday morning. He's like, man, I knew I needed to find a place. And I'm like
20 something,
23.
Okay.
And I'm like, you moved in when? He's like, yesterday. He's like, I actually just sliced my hand. You show me. He's like, yeah, I tried to open a box and I stabbed myself. He already got stitches. Like,
that's the single guy life right there, man.
And he's ready to go.
Yeah.
Slicing fingers and showing up to church the next day. So we're seeing a lot of that, seeing a lot of families, men leading their families well and learning, right? And all of us, no matter where we are with our families, we're trying to figure out what does that look like to always lead our families well. But I think, I don't know if it's just the season, because I grew up a lot in church where it was a lot of women.
Yeah, same.
The women led the stuff. You didn't see a lot of stuff, interaction from men. You had the occasional environment. I was trying to think, because we're doing a men's breakfast at church this week. I remember going to a men's breakfast with my grandfather as a young guy, and that's like one of the only like men's thing I can think of.
That's right.
Like in the 90s.
Couple old guys with some styrofoam cups of bad coffee.
100%. I can see that styrofoam cups like this big, right? It's like 4 ounces.
Yeah.
But just to see the excitement, the passion, men stepping up to the plate. I think even for us, we have amazing women leading, but we have so many men that are stepping in and leading in big ways, like serving in kids.
Yeah.
Serving in coffee, right? It's not just men are not only for the parking team.
Yes.
Men can only.
That's something I had not seen. I'm thinking about this. Is this true? I think it is. I don't think I'd really seen men serving in the children's ministry until coming to the chapel.
Yeah. No, it's there. It's happening. Yeah. I think guys are
the
seeing
worship
that.
team.
Yeah, the worship team.
Come on.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many areas.
Shout out to Shadow.
Yeah. You sing a tune for us real quick? So many areas that guys are stepping up in and seeing, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and I think it speaks a lot to what you guys are doing. Like I see that engagement, for us at our church, I see that engagement. I was telling you earlier, I see the shirts everywhere.
Yeah.
Like you're seeing men want to be connected, men want to be plugged in, and it's just all it takes is somebody to start challenging, somebody start pushing them, and that creates a ripple effect, right? They get pumped, and they're like, man, I'm gonna challenge some dudes now too.
Yeah.
So it's like it's just a continual growth. I don't see it stopping.
Yeah.
I can't speak for every area across the world, but I think what we're in right now and what we're part of, what we're seeing is that continual growth, that continual pushing.
So you're seeing continual growth. I know this was a long time ago. I mean, I'm going to show how out of the loop I am with you, but I remember the announcement a long time ago when you guys went to a second service. Are you still seeing that?
Oh yeah, we're looking at what
you
does
guys,
fall look like. Should we do a third?
So you guys are like maxing out 2 services.
Yeah, we're 1 for sure. Second, kind of come. It's again due to our area.
Yeah,
that you're gonna have a different. It's so different.
Like
I think
seasonal influxes.
Yeah, seasonal, like if the weather's nice, a lot of young professionals, they'll hit that early service. Our area is a big brunch town, so man, that people love that 9:30. It's packed out the wazoo, and then people go to brunch.
It's a great diner right down the road.
Oh yeah, there's tons of fantastic food.
So that's awesome. So you guys are discussing a third.
Yeah, but what we're seeing too is, so when I came 7 years ago, the youth group age was like 4, and I think 2 of them were my own kids. In the city. Yeah. And so now I think last night we were like close to almost 50.
Oh, wow.
Like middle school, high school students. And so what that's showing is the growth of families.
Yeah.
Because it was way more college oriented, which would, when college was out, you're like, wow, where'd everybody go?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get fired. The church emptied out today. But now, like, you're seeing the families connected, those involved, those people jumping in, and now we do have a lot of college students coming, but they're jumping in. You see families like loving on them, putting them in the groups, bringing them into their houses, all this kind of stuff. So you're seeing a lot of growth in that area of like the family dynamic.
Yeah.
A lot of people think it's the city, urban. They're like, oh, it's probably just all a bunch of young kids.
Yeah.
But we have a high volume now of empty nesters who have kids that age. That's almost like, well, my kids aren't here, but this is my kid's age or my grandkids would be. And so now they're coming, they're getting involved, they're investing, they're serving, because it's like there's an excitement there that they're wanting to be a part of. So
I feel like there's like two totally different like paths happening with church attendance in America. And I'm reading right now, currently reading What's So Great About Christianity, Dinesh D'Souza. And he's like given all the numbers of decline in church attendance across each denomination over like this book came out a few years ago, and he's doing like the past like 10 years. So like Presbyterian Church as a denomination has lost tens of millions. Lutheran lost tens of millions. Methodist, tens of millions. Episcopal lost tens of millions. Just all of them are declining drastically in their attendance. And so that's one of the paths. And then the other one is what he calls in his study non-denom churches, which I think is a very big umbrella term that has some I think he's talking non-denominational like,
right,
which are growing. So you're seeing the people coming out of a lot of the more traditional denominations. And I think you're seeing them come into kind of more of this non-denominational, I'll call it, approach. So that's awesome. So I think if you're listening to this, right, and you're like, what's this guy talking about? Growth. My church is like hemorrhaging. Nobody's there anymore. It's a couple old people. That can give you a very skewed perspective of what's going on nationally, because it's like, man, there are churches that are growing big time. So I feel like, and we've talked a lot about this, COVID in 2020 created this big reshuffle. Kind of everybody shuffled and came out the other end at a different church. So you've got the growth going on. Chapel's got growth. A lot of these denominations do. I'm just asking you to speculate here. Why do you think people are leaving? Why do you think that big decline in Lutheran, Presbyterian, Methodist, Episcopal? What's your guess there?
So I can't speak for every one of those denominations, but from what I've seen, personal opinion is I think people don't want wishy-washy.
Yeah. Men
don't want that. As a man, I want to know where are you at? What is the, like you kind of have those questions. All right. I don't want to do I'm not sure about this, or, well, we're trying to figure, and now you're going to have unclear things. There's certain things that I think we can read in scripture and be like, well, yeah, I get how we could kind of, but there's some staples where it's kind of, I think churches have kind of decided like, let's work this, let's do this. And I think you're seeing that decline. And I say that because people come and ask questions. Hey, well, how do you feel about this? I'm like, well, let's talk personally about this, or let's have this conversation. So I think what you're seeing is momentum creates momentum. And so when you start seeing some of these churches that, say men or people start going to, it creates something there too. And then people see, well, there must be something there. I want to see what's going on.
Yeah.
COVID for us was we were supposed to open our location week 2 of COVID, our new one. So it was
that was when Scott's Edition was launching.
It was long. Yeah. We were in the fan.
Yeah.
Got all that. Did a whole new build out.
Yeah.
So week 2 of when COVID was, of the 2-week break.
Yeah.
was supposed to be our launch.
What was it? 2 weeks to stop the spread?
Yeah.
Something like that.
So we started off at a challenge just right off the bat.
Yeah.
And the city was, they're checking, keeping an eye on things. So like, that was a tough season there. But to go back to what you asked, I guess, prior, man, I know for me personally, like what I'm thankful for in our church is the ability to continue to push forward, push through things, to have strong biblical beliefs, to not waver, to not be afraid to stand up for our beliefs, for what we believe in. And man, I know that's going to come with a cost. But for me personally, I would rather finish that way, knowing like, hey man, I stood strong for what the Bible said. And go that way.
Well, I totally agree with you. I think it is, like you said, it's wishy-washy. I love how Frank Turek says it. He says, if your church isn't like preaching the gospel and willing to risk being offensive, then it's just a hymn singing Rotary Club.
Wow.
I love how he puts that, right? And he was like, and once you've watered down to where you're just like the rest of culture, then why would I get up early on a Sunday morning to go there? If you don't have anything different to offer and you're just like the rest of culture. And I'm like, that is it. That's so true. And I think it's counterintuitive, right? Because you think, well, I don't want to offend the people because I want them to come here. But then if you don't do that, then you have nothing to offer, right? And I think one of the most offensive things we have to say as Christians is that you're a sinner and I'm a sinner and we need to repent, and only Jesus is the answer. And man, that's like a line in the sand, and a lot of people, but so if your church isn't saying those things, then why get up early to go to it? Right. And like, I started going to the chapel in 2020, and that was one of the things I loved about it right off the bat was, whatever the topic was that Sunday, Brandon ended with the gospel. He was like putting it out there, old school, like, giving the gospel. And I was like, man, this is like so refreshing. And I think that's attractive to people. And anything you think about, whether a church, but also you just think about as a man leading your family, anytime you go wishy-washy, isn't that just unattractive? Right. So like, you can think about it on the big macro church denomination level, or you can just think about it on the micro, each individual man at his home. Anytime we water down truth to not offend people, that's so unattractive. Nobody wants to be around that, right? They want to follow people, their husband, their father, or their pastor that says, here's what's right, here's what's wrong. Don't do this. Do this. Follow me. Right. I think that's just attractive, whether we're talking pastors or dads.
And you were telling me earlier about, batch class. And I think what's powerful in that is exactly what you're saying is I know with Men's Alliance, teaching men how to share your faith, how to know what that means. I think a lot of times we probably become wishy-washy because we don't even know what to say or how to say it,
right.
Or we really haven't read our Bible that much. So it's like, no, I believe this. Well, and then you're like, well, prove it. You're like, I'm sure it's somewhere.
Yep, that's exactly right.
So I think that's what's so powerful about even things like Men's Alliance is like, all right, we're gonna grow together. We're gonna learn. Iron sharpens iron. This is why we believe it. Well, now let's talk about it. And so I think what that's doing is taking the wishy-washy. People see the wishy-washy, and then they see the like, you know what? They don't have it all figured out, but man, there's something. They're learning. They're pushing each other. Like, I'm always gonna pick this.
I think denominations see non-denominational churches as you need to pick a side. Like, I think they think non-denominations are, they just believe everything. They believe it's like an accumulation of all denominations. Like, we accept everybody. Maybe that's just me. But I think I can see a denomination saying that non-denominational churches are like the wishy-washy.
I can see somebody saying that doesn't maybe has never been to one and doesn't really know. It's funny because I think that about a lot of the big denominations.
Yeah,
it's like they're trying to please everybody. They're trying to not take a hard stance on anything.
Yeah.
But that's funny. So, hey guys, are you looking to lose a few pounds, tone up your muscles, get in better shape physically? Well, let me tell you about our guy, Nick Hawkins, call sign Coach from Bravo Tribe. He's the owner of Hawkins Health and Fitness, and they have a patented once and for all fat loss protocol. They can help you lose the fat, tone up the muscle without the crazy restrictive diets or intense cardio sessions or tedious calorie tracking. Okay, check out Nick Hawkins, call sign Coach at Hawkins Health and Fitness. I'm going to give you his number. Get ready to jot this down, 804-638-1386. Check out Coach, Hawkins Health and Fitness. He'll help get you in shape. What are some of the things that you see? And when I talk, the church, not just necessarily our church, but churches in America, what's something you see a lot of churches really getting right? Like, what do you think churches are really doing well right now in 2024 to bring in families and men?
That's good. I think when you look at environments and churches that are growing, especially with men, I think one thing that we're doing really well is we're championing the bride of Christ. Like we're championing the church. We're saying like, this is good. This is right. This is powerful. I think about, the church is called the bride. My wife, I have a bride.
Mm-hmm.
I want to always champion her.
Yeah.
I always want to, I always want her to be the best she can be. I want to celebrate her. I want to talk about, man, you look good. Like I want to point those things out. I want to celebrate that. And I think we're seeing a lot more of that with men of like, you know what, man, this is happening. This is working. It's almost like people want to be championed, right? People want to be believed in. And it seems like that's what, and I can speak for our environment, is that's what we're seeing. Men are coming in, being championed, they're celebrated, families being celebrated. I know for us, man, everybody's different. For me, I want to figure out a way to, how do I have a touch with every single person that walks in the door? Like even if it's, and when I mean touch, like I'm a dad, I'm a father, so as a shepherd, however you want to say that, even if it's a hand on the shoulder, if it's a hug, if it's a handshake, like I want people to show up and be like, man, I'm a champion of you. Like I'm a I believe in what you're taking that first step. You're being here. So I'm big. I like to hug people. There'll be a line sometimes from just like, man, everybody stay right there. Come on. So to me, the environments that I'm seeing growth is the people that are like, we believe in this. We're a champion of the church. We're gonna celebrate the wins.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we're not growing. That doesn't mean we're not learning and figuring things out, but to speak rightly.
It sounds like you're saying encourage. I'm hearing encouragement.
Yeah, encourage.
It's like you're creating an atmosphere that when a person walks in the door, they're feeling encouraged.
Yeah.
They're feeling welcomed.
I think that's one thing you hear often with our church is, man, when I showed up in the parking lot or, I walked in the front doors, I just felt different.
Yeah.
And that is the feel, the environment is encouragement. It is the champion thing. It is the love, the care. And we all shown up with a mess.
We all need encouragement, man. Yeah. That's something, it's free, right? It's free to offer. Everybody needs it. It's very attractive. So that makes a lot of sense. I can see that, right? At least just given my perspective is when I think about the growing, more non-denominational type church environments, my stereotype is like very excited and very encouraging, sometimes almost to an extreme. But then I think about the old school, my stereotype of like the old school, denominations is the opposite. Very formal, very rigid, very cold, very discouraging. Right. And of course, those are both stereotypes. And, But at least that's kind of my thought. So hearing you say encouragement, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, because that's kind of my image of that.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is something that churches could do better? Where is an area, if they're excelling at, championing, where is there room for improvement? What do you see when you look at churches across America? What's got you saying, man, everybody needs to do a better job at blank?
Wow. I probably can only speak to what I think I need to do better.
All right, that'll work.
I mean, because I know every church is different. You got, like we just talked about, denominations in our church, and even churches in the area. So I think for me, I'm trying to figure out what's the best way of even talking about being better. I mean, I feel like, really, if you stop and think about it, like, I need to be better at everything.
Right.
But that's
really kind of one of the challenges, I'll say,
mm-hmm.
of being a leader,
mm-hmm.
is you're always looking for ways you can improve. And so that's like one of the negative tendencies of being a good leader, is you're never satisfied, because you're always looking to improve. So we can sometimes have a tendency to be a little too hard on ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and beat ourselves up, because we're like, oh, I got to do this better. I need to do this better. I need to do this. I got to improve it. Right. So sometimes we can go too far with our ambition. We're not just happy and satisfied with what we've got where we are.
That's what I was going to say. Maybe this could be for more than just me. Comparison. I think that's the one thing that too many of us do, not only with church, but our own lives as men, as dads. We're always comparing, and we're trying to put ourselves to a standard that maybe God didn't even lay out for us. Or maybe there was, we're trying to say, I should be doing this, but maybe that's not what God, I should be a better speaker. Well, maybe God, I don't need a microphone. Maybe you should do that. So I think that's probably something that we do, not only as believers, but maybe even as churches. Or we were talking about growth, so it's like, well, how come they're growing, and how come I'm not, or how come this has happened, or how come you drive through a neighborhood, man, how do they have that and that and that? Like, what did I do wrong? So
comparison kills joy.
It kills it, it steals it, it beats it, like you name it. It's the thief of all of that. And so and when we don't have joy, I think that changes how we lead, how we love, how we care for people. It changes how we walk, how we wake up. If you don't have joy, man, when you wake up, you're in a bad mood already. Like, you go into bed, it ruins everything. And so I think joy is a key component. And for me personally, like, I want to be a joy-filled person. Mm-hmm. Like, that's how I view, like, the church, because a lot of people have a view of church of not being very joy-filled or fun. Yeah. And so wherever I'm at, if I'm in a room, I want to be fun. I want to be like fun. Yeah. I want to be joy-filled. Like, I want to be like, you know what? I'm a man. I love it, but man, I'm having fun too. Let's have some life. So I think comparison would be
I think that's a good answer.
My answer.
I think we can all see that, whether it's like at the church level or, at the personal level. Yeah. The second you start, feeling that jealousy, or doubting yourself because somebody else is got something bigger or better, and it's a bad place.
We all hear it and know it. But social media is what steals our joy. Yeah. Right. We're watching everybody's highlight reel. Yeah. We're wondering why our reel doesn't look like
everybody's at Disney World but you.
Yeah. Everyone's living their best life, but they're full of it. Yeah. So it's like we're comparing ourselves to somebody's highlights of the day.
That's
and
right.
So that I think
that are usually manufactured.
Yeah.
That aren't really a highlight.
They were all fighting and yelling at each other right before that photo.
Yeah, they did it for the gram.
Absolutely. No. And we compare ourselves to that, which sucks, man. Like, why do we try to put ourselves against stuff that's not even real in the first place?
Yeah. So what do you think? And I've been dying to ask this question. I want to ask, like, everybody we start having on. I think this is one of the most important questions we should be asking ourselves as men is, what is Satan's best play right now in his playbook? What's his best play that he's running against American men? Because I think, we're never going to win if you don't know your enemy.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't watch the play tapes and see what they're doing and know how to combat that.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you see going on right now, taking out most American men?
So I was thinking about this question, and I think probably one of the what I think the biggest thing is taking out. There's a few ways of saying it. Taking out the role of a father, because if you think about how important a father is to a home, and I think that's probably one of the biggest attacks on men because it affects generations to come. So we work with the Department of Corrections a lot.
Yeah,
doing a lot of stuff with them, partnering with them, services, that kind of stuff. That's one example of almost all the men and women that are currently in the Department of Corrections did not have a father or a father's home, or was there but wasn't really there.
Yep.
I think the enemy attacks the man because the man affects way more than we realize. It affects the home. It affects the environments. And so for years, men have just stepped out instead of trying, instead of us being like, you know what, this is going to be hard, or I got to go through this. Many of us have just stepped away and said, it's just easier for me not to, I'm just going to take my hands off of it. And so I think that just continues down. You look at I'll just keep using Department of Corrections. It goes with a lot of things, with drug use, alcohol, addictions. A lot of that stems from a father. Another child sees that, it just keeps going on. And the role of a man, you don't have to have kids to be a father.
That's a good point.
You don't, there's the heart of a father. And so we're going to talk about Jesus, God, as our father, the example. You don't have to have a son or a daughter to care for somebody that way as a son or daughter,
right?
To love somebody, to believe in them, to have if we as men, and I go back to the champion, the encouraging, a lot of men would probably say, hey, well, my dad didn't encourage me. My dad didn't tell me I did good. He only told me, what do you mean you got to be? Oh, no, you missed that pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And you got 4 home runs, but you're talking about my one strikeout, Dad.
Yeah.
So like we kind of live in this area of we've taken how important a man is, and we've kind of said, well, let's just pull it out. Let's not make it as big of a deal, and it's affecting everything.
Yeah,
I think that's why we got wishy-washy. That's why we got problems here. That's why we got this year. We've got a decline in this. That's why we got drug use, addiction. That's why we have broken marriages. And it's not all the man's fault. I'm not saying that. I know it takes 2 in everything.
Yeah.
But I think as men, we've decided to become weaker.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the enemy has attacked us. And so for us, instead of saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to fight for this, we've chosen to say, I'm good. I'm going to back off. Like,
oh yeah,
I'm going to step off. I don't need this. And I know, like, I was reading the sign about, you're not alone. Like, we're common men. There's so many things that we've chosen to say, nah, I'm just going to take my hands off. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to disappear. Disappear doesn't mean you leave your family. It could just mean like you zone out. You go home and you watch TV, or Saturday you don't play with your kid. So I think if there is an attack on American men, it's men not stepping up to the challenge. It's men stepping back and letting others do it, which could lead to ladies leading certain things, or the wives having to lead the house. And so, I think
that's so good. I like how you said you don't have to have kids to be a father. That just got me thinking about how in the relationship coaching that I do, when I talk with a guy who is like, I didn't have a dad growing up, or my dad was abusive or alcoholic, when you talk to a guy who did not have a good father figure, but he's turned out amazing, I always know something about that guy before I even ask it. And I'll ask, was there like another male figure in your life? And I mean, if they're like a really successful guy, it's like 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
They'll say, oh yeah, well, my grandfather or my uncle or my football coach was like a dad to me. There's that guy that stepped in and fulfilled that role, and it literally saved that young boy's trajectory, and he turned out successful because of that. I've never talked to a guy who did amazing, didn't have a father, and didn't ever have another male figure that you know, fulfilled that role in his life. So I think that's so important. And we've got guys, young teenagers in Men's Alliance whose dads are not in the picture, and somebody else is bringing them to Men's Alliance. Either another Men's Alliance guy, or sometimes their moms just drop them off because they're like, they know, like, hey, I want my son in that environment every Saturday morning. I want him with these Christian men. And so that's one of the things I'm always trying to figure out how we can do better in Men's Alliance, is like being that role model, being that father for teenagers that don't have one in the picture. Because you're right. I think that destroying or sidelining or whatever the dads is one of the best plays that Satan's got. So, all right. So last question, how do we defeat that play? What do we do about that? In light of that, what do we need to do?
So my first question I would ask anyone listening to this is, who are you fathering right now? And if you're not, why not? Because it is up to us to kind of do that, to step into that. And so maybe you are the man that you can say, hey, well, my dad wasn't there, or this wasn't this. Well, what that means is you have decided, hey, you know what? I'm not going to continue what happened. You draw your line in the sand, say, hey, you know what? I grew up this way. I don't want that to happen for my kids or for whoever. So what does that look like for us to say, you know what? I'm going to try to have a heart of a father and care for people. You know, like, I'm going to find somebody. You could say disciple, but I still think it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's not, there is the discipleship element, but there's a difference. I have a son and 2 daughters, and how I raise them. Yes, I disciple and share things, but having the father is, man, there's a different aspect. It's how you care, you know, how you show emotion, how you use your mouth and say, hey, I care for you. Maybe you get closer and say, hey, I love you. Hey, I'm proud of you. Like, we have to like kind of get that stuff out.
Yeah.
And I think if we as men can start saying that to people, you know, you can tell a guy like, man, bro, you look good today, man. Like, I see guys and I'm like, man, that mustache, man, look at that mustache, dude. And it's like, you can tell that somebody doesn't get a lot of encouragement because they'll light up and they're like, oh, thanks, bro, man. It means a lot to me. You know, or like, yeah, well, I'm trying to talk my wife into it, you know. But I think just if we to combat that, I think we have to know that there's a challenge. We have to know that there's a fight against us as men, fathers. I'll say fatherhood. And then we have to now, like, say, make that switch and say, you know what, I am going to be a father. Whether that is, you can have your own kids and father other people. I feel like I have my own kids, but I'm a dad to a lot of other people. I'm a father to a lot of other people. I'm a, hey man, how you doing? How's things going? Encouraging, loving, caring, proud of you. What can I do? What can I pray for you? Do you want to come over? I think life is involved in that. Like, you have to be willing to say, you know what, I'm going to open up my doors. You know, we've got people that spend time with our family that aren't physical family, but they are family. They feel like family. They're part of it because they're in our life. I'm being a father in a sense to them, and they have parents. It doesn't mean they're doing a bad job.
Yeah.
But,
you know, I'll say this, and this kind of is that comparison piece. I heard a guy say this several years ago, probably about 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. He said a lot of people don't invite families over for dinner in their homes anymore because there's so much pressure to have a nice home, to have the perfect home. Like, you've got to have all the right furniture. Everything's got to be clean. You've got to be able to cook a gourmet meal. All the kids have to be well behaved. Everybody has to be well dressed, right? It's like, oh, I'm not having anybody over. That just basically, there's been a decline in entertaining and just having families over for a meal in America over the past couple decades. And so this guy, I think he coined this term, I don't know, but he was saying, we practiced gritty hospitality. And this resonated with me. And he was like, so what we'll do is we will invite families over and we will purposefully leave the shoes and socks on the living room floor. There's some dirty dishes on the counter, and we're going to order pizza.
Yeah.
And get this is where it gets good. He said, when you set the bar low, and you invite people over and it's not perfect, it's gritty hospitality, they think, and first of all, they enjoy it. They have a great time. But then they also feel like they can have you over.
Yeah.
Because they literally feel like, oh, that's what we're doing? I can even do that. Or maybe I can do better. I can invite them back. But he was saying it'll actually harm the relationship if you have them over for dinner and everything is perfect. If everything in your home is absolutely perfect and it's a gourmet meal, they're never going to invite you over because they're like, oh crap, we can't reach that. You set the bar too high. So that's kind of that comparison piece, and being the father.
Yeah.
Practicing being, encouraging, being the father, invite people over. Don't worry about being perfect. It's actually better if you're not.
Yeah.
Just get them in the door.
That's why I just stay in my underwear when people come over.
Man, I can't wait to come over.
Yeah, it's like, come on, make yourself at home.
Yeah. We had a couple families over a while back, and we all just sitting down, getting ready to eat. And my daughter, she's 6. She always climbs up on this edge of the stairs and jumps off.
Oh.
So we're getting ready to have dinner. We sat down. She literally jumped off, head straight into the corner of the cabinet.
Love it.
Blood everywhere.
It's a great icebreaker.
And it was like, we can only go uphill from here. I ended up having to leave and get stitches.
Yeah. Oh my God.
But a couple of the parents were like, how did you not freak out? I'm like, you just can't, it's like, I mean, it was split. I think she got a lot of stitches. But it's just great to hear that story. I was like, man, that's one way to start.
That's some gritty hospitality right there, man.
You guys want to come over?
That's right.
You can always go uphill from there.
and they'll more likely to invite you guys over because they're like, hey, as long as we don't end up at the ER.
Yeah, that's right. We actually left them. My wife and I left them at the house. We're like, well, just lock the door when you go.
You guys just kind of clean up a little bit before you leave. That's awesome. Yeah. I love it. Awesome. Well, Jason, thanks, man. We've covered some good ground today.
Great.
From urban demographics and church growth and what we're doing right and what we need to do better. And I think for guys listening to this, big takeaways are for me or encourage people. Like, don't underestimate the value of encouragement, of being that father. Even to somebody that's not your kid, that's important, right? And probably most importantly, reject the lie that fathers are not important, right? Because that's the playbook from the enemy right there. So, guys, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'll see you around the fire. To find out more about what we're doing and to join us on our mission, go to men'salliancetribe.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a 5-star review.